All right. So just a second, and Susan Michel will be on. Oh, I need to stop the recorder from Teresa. Don't want that on there. All right, redirecting to YouTube. And here we are, Susan Michel. This mic is all yours.
Hi, this is Susan Michel. I am here in Western Massachusetts with my good friend Myrna Skoller in Florida. It is so great to be here as always. How are you doing today, Myrna?
Just terrific. I spoke to you for the last 15, 20 minutes, and you really uplifted me. So feeling very good, because now that I'm sharing with you, it's a very rewarding thing for me. So I'm feeling great.
I feel the same way, right back at you. I know it's just so important to surround ourselves with positive, peaceful energy, and then we just kind of uplift each other. So I have both of our books in front of me here. My book is Surrender to Joy: From Suicide to Serenity, based on the principles of A Course in Miracles. Myrna's book, your book, is Private Lessons with Jesus from A Course in Miracles, which is just so lovely. And then I also have A Course in Miracles with me, as I always do, so we can read from the text and interpret the text, which is just so empowering. I love today's lesson. And I think I am going to start with one of my favorite paragraphs on page 28. And this is my way, our way of giving our time here in Pal Talk on YouTube over to the Christ's consciousness. And what Jesus writes in chapter 2, he writes, "I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal." And I believe that any paragraph that you read in A Course in Miracles, if you can really digest the meaning, it just says it all. It's no matter where we are, God is with us and all is good in our world. And it's just so important to trust that. Today's lesson is about connecting, embodying the peace of God. And we spoke a little bit. I love how you phrased it. The peace of God is just so different than the peace of the ego. I think the ego tries to trick us sometimes. I thought that was a very interesting analogy. How would you say that you tell the difference between the peace of God and the trickiness of the ego, Myrna?
Yes, because the ego, well, what is the ego? I mean, people who study the Course in Miracles are familiar with the term ego and spirit, and how the Course in Miracles differentiates the two. So if we're speaking about the ego through the eyes of A Course in Miracles, the peace of God can't be found through the ego's eyes, because it is the part of us that is separate and apart from God. And the ego, that is also a part of us, has separated itself and doesn't understand that. And until you realize that what we think is peace is not necessarily so, because we can be triggered so easily. We think we're peaceful 1 minute, and then we're triggered by something or someone else, and that sends us into a tailspin. So we're not peaceful anymore. So the peace of God is just the opposite. It is true peace. It's peace that we can experience by trusting in God, knowing that God wants only peace for us, and relying on that aspect of who we are, because we are also a part of God. And that is the part that I of course, I bow down to, but because I want to be in that God, as you put it, Susan, that God socket, because that's where we can experience lasting peace. And even lasting peace is interrupted even when we're in the God peace, because we switch over to ego mode. So, and that's really the how we become confused. But I know through experience, through studying the Course in Miracles with you all these years, and reading the lessons and practicing that when we are triggered, to get back into the God socket, to get back into, and we can do it with an affirmation, we can do it with a prayer, we can do it. It's just knowing that we don't belong in the place that's not giving us true peace.
I've been listening to a lot of Michael Singer lately. He is the author of The Untethered Soul, The Surrender Experiment. And I love how he phrases healing in this world, because every time we're triggered, it's never about the external event that triggers us. It's always about something within us that has not yet been healed. So if we can refrain from blaming the other person or the external circumstance and just take responsibility for that pain point, all triggers can be used for healing purposes. The triggers are obviously not peaceful. However, our darkness needs to come to the light in order for true healing to occur. So that's how Michael Singer basically explains it. Anytime anything in the external world causes us anxiety, it's always because something within us is ready to be healed. And if we can simply own the pain instead of projecting our pain or blaming outside circumstances, that's how healing occurs. However, it's easier said than done. I know I had a bit of a trigger on Saturday, and sometimes when we're in the midst of the trigger, and I know intellectually that it's not about the other person, it's about me, but still when I'm experiencing the pain, it really requires a lot of discipline to own the pain instead of projecting the pain or blaming the person that triggered me. It's just really challenging. I also had an experience. I think I experienced a trigger on Saturday. It's the lady that I work for made a mistake about my schedule, and she proceeded to blame me for her mistake. I don't know what it is exactly that is going on within me when it comes to that. But on Sunday, the next day, I was out on the boat, and I had a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety, and I couldn't get to the other side of it. And then this song came on the radio, or the player, the music that my husband had on. And something about this song really helped me connect to that sadness, because I was experiencing a lot of anxiety. And as soon as I could just kind of stop and allow the sadness to have a voice, and I really cried. I just sat with the song and I cried. And on the other side of the tears, there was so much joy and so much freedom. Now, I don't think this is just a one-time fix, we cry and we're healed. But I do think for me, when I'm experiencing tension and I can just kind of open myself up to the pain and own the pain, I think there is so much joy and freedom on the other side. It's amazing how that works, because I know I cried when a certain song was playing, and then within 10 minutes I was like dancing on the boat, and I was really connected to the peace, love, joy, and freedom of God. So I thought that was a really valuable experience, because that's what I write about in my book, Surrender to Joy. That's what I believe Course in Miracles is saying, that our darkness needs to come to the light. And I just think it's so important to own the pain, because this whole lifetime, I feel like I've had my peaks and my valleys, and the valleys are always followed by peaks. And for whatever the reason, my peaks are always followed by valleys. So pretty soon I'll have to get off the hamster habit trail. I'll have to get off this cycle that I'm experiencing, because I don't think it has to be like that. But in this lifetime, that's how I've chosen to live it, with peaks and valleys. And I do know when I can take responsibility for my own feeling, it leads to a lot of healing on the other side.
Yes, Susan. I like when you say own the pain, because, I thought about that. Owning the pain is not to blame it on somebody else, make somebody else responsible for our pain. So to own the pain is to know that the pain is ours, period. Nobody else is going to die from our pain. We're going to die from it. This is a phrase. It's like we take the poison and expect the other person to die. And it just doesn't work that way. Yet the ego convinces us that it's so. Take the poison. The other person is going to die. But it's so ridiculous, of course. But that's really what it's all about. When we realize that the pain is not about anybody else, but within ourselves. And we can know it, but unless we feel it and begin to use it and begin to see it as complete truth, then we'll feel less of the pain, because there's nobody to blame. And we know that we don't have to hang on to it. We can let the pain go. We really can. How do we let pain go? Like you said, how did it work for you? You heard a song on the boat. Do you know, for me, the words of a song sometimes, or the music and the words of a certain song will absolutely work through me and bring me that undying peace that's within me, that is mine, because I was created from God, and God gave me that wonderful place of love. And of course, peace comes from love, really. And that's what motivates me. You mentioned that, and I felt that. I was visiting my husband at the cemetery, actually. He passed away. We were married for 32 years. And of course, when I left and went into my car to drive home, the radio was playing Starry, Starry Eyes, Starry, Starry Night. And the words that came through just then were, the world was never meant as one as beautiful as you. Whoa, that really, those words and the song just made me feel so wonderful, because that's how I felt about Charlie, my husband. The world was never meant for one as beautiful as him, because he was such a giving, loving, and loved me like nobody ever loved me. And that he made that obvious every single day of my life and his. And so, I really felt that, and I believe that there are no accidents. The right words somehow come by you when you need them, whether it be the words of a song, the words that you hear from somebody that you admire, something you might read, an affirmation. Any of those things can really bring you into the God socket. And that's how we differentiate the ego from spirit, by moving from that part of us that we know that is not real. We understand it certainly doesn't have our best interests. When I say it is a part of us that's not real. The only part about that is real is the God part of us. And that's the part that really gives us the motivation to know what we have to do, what we're supposed to do. And one more thing, we talk about peace, and you and I were discussing this before, that when somebody walks into a room that's completely peaceful, we recognize that peace right away because we're in that motivation, we're in that frequency, right? That what you said?
Yeah. I like what you said about this song that you heard after you went to visit Charlie. I think that's an Elton John song, right? I love Elton John. I think he's a super genius. The world was never meant for anyone as beautiful as you. You know, that reminds me of the lesson, the workbook lesson of the day. I want the peace of God. It says, the peace of God is everything I want. The peace of God is my one goal, the aim of all my living here, the end I seek, my purpose and my function and my life, while I abide where I am not at home. So A Course in Miracles is telling us that this is not our home. Like Charlie was just too beautiful to be here for any longer than he was, because it was time for him to go home. And this is what it's telling us, that we all are not at home while we're here in this earthly classroom. I think there's always a part of us that senses that there's more than what we are experiencing here. You know, that's like when I really feel the peace of God, it's during my meditations, you know, when I can feel myself kind of rising up and coming out of my body, and I can feel that I am more than a body. I am not a body. I am free, for I am still as God created me. I mean, this is not our home. Our home is not here. And it's really important to remember that. And then also, you know, in terms of the energetic vibration that you spoke about, you know, it's when I'm around somebody that is at peace within themselves, I kind of feel myself feeling attracted to their energetic vibration, because it's just very content. It's very serene. It's the person doesn't get distracted. The person is actually present with me, and I'm very attracted to that type of energy, you know. And I think it's because the person at that moment is rising to a higher vibrational frequency. That's what I believe. And then the opposite is also true. I guess many times in this world, we learn through contrast. When I'm speaking to someone and I can feel a lot of chaos, you know, whether it's in person or over the phone, and I can feel that they're doing like a million and one things at the same time, it's just not a frequency that I find myself drawn to. I don't find myself empowered by their frequency. That's why I think, like, to be fully present in the moment is so important. It actually raises our energetic vibration, you know, because we all have a certain vibration, you know, that we're tapping into. I mean, we can be at a lower level, and then something can happen and we can shift to a higher level. But I think it's important to just be aware of if we're fully present in the moment or not. I know for me, and I did not meditate today, which is interesting. And I think there was a bit of a struggle for me today, because meditation is a really important way to start out my day. And I think the three components of my meditation, I always start out with the Course in Miracles lesson. I want the peace of God. I think that's amazing. And then I go into acceptance, gratitude, and forgiveness. Actually, in the order: acceptance, accepting my life exactly as it is; forgiveness, forgiving everyone in my life, including myself. I think the most important person to forgive is ourselves, because when we forgive someone else, who we're really forgiving is ourselves. So it's about acceptance, forgiveness, and gratitude. So, and I can really, I mean, meditation, it's just such a valuable way to start the day, because like during the meditation, I just kind of plug myself into that God socket. And I realize that nothing of the world really matters. There are no problems. A Course in Miracles tells us that there are no problems. We don't have any problems. Our only problem is that we feel disconnected from God. And that's not a real problem, because we're always connected to God, but sometimes we just forget. So that's our only real problem, that we don't feel that connection. We get lost sometimes in the world. And I think meditation and A Course in Miracles lessons helps me start the day with a higher vibrational frequency.
Yeah, you just said we get lost in the world. We get lost in the world of what? Of illusion. That's what we get lost in. And you said, and that really is what came to mind when you said that. Yes, we're completely lost in a world of illusion. And the illusion is a lot of chatter all the time. And it means nothing. And Jesus in the Course in Miracles says that if we're not thinking with God, we're not thinking at all. So if we're not thinking at all, God doesn't know what we really want, because he doesn't understand what we're thinking, because the ego is all gibberish. It doesn't mean anything. And we use words. And what are words? Words are just symbols. They're symbols so that we can understand, at least we think we understand what we're talking about. And that's why we invented language and words and so forth, but it's all part of the illusion. And to be with God is just to be with that part of us that doesn't need words, that part of us that understands that we're completely settled in a place that we belong. We belong there because we were created to be there. We were created to be in that place that is of God and of the of everything, really. Because once we let go and let ourselves go into that God socket, I love that expression, I use it, that God socket, we're plugged into it, and nothing can interfere with that until we unplug. And why do we unplug? Because something else has gotten our attention. Something else seems more valuable. Something else seems more delightful to the touch, or to the taste, or to the sound, or whatever it is. And that's what we had lured away into. And then we start to think that this is the world we're in, because we're happy at the moment, but then something happens, as you say, we trigger that, and then we're back to square one. So to be in the God socket is to be in that place that we can, we're living in the world. We do have to, go about our business, yes. And that's when the Course says to be in the world, not of the world. Yes, be in the world, do what you have to do, enjoy your life, enjoy it, really. But understand that it's not lasting. Understand that it's not going to give you the pleasures that you seek if it's ego-based. And the only thing that will give you that complete peace is to be in that place that we know are all the answers. If we sit back and we need an answer, we'll get the answer. And that's why I think it's so important not to make rash decisions, because that's all ego. So to sit back and to wait for the answer comes to us. God is never in a rush, and we get the answer in due time. I know I was telling you before, when I'm not at peace, sometimes in the middle of the night, I'm aware when I wake up for some reason, whether it be from a bad dream or whatever, and I'm not at peace and I'm fearful. I don't know why I'm fearful, but I've learned that if I say any, and I've been doing this for years, by the way, to say an affirmation, any affirmation in the book, in the Course in Miracles book will do. And I almost feel as if I'm being patted down, gently, and I fall right back to sleep. The fear goes away. I feel it leaving my body, and I'm left with wanting to go back to sleep. And it works 100% of the time. If anybody needs that, that tip, it's a very good tip. It's better than getting up and drinking a cup of coffee, and, pacing back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, God is always talking to us, but what happens is we block the words of God with our monkey mind, with the ego chit chat. So sometimes it's difficult to hear what he's telling us. But if we can just slow down, if we can just pause, if we can just I've heard prayer is a way of talking to God. Meditation is a way of listening to what God has to say to us. But, we don't have to go into a meditative state to hear what God is saying to us. All we need to do is slow down, release any fear, and just really stay present. And we're always going to hear the words of God. And because the ego, it just kind of rants and raves and gets excited and gets down. That's what I would say with my ego. My ego is kind of bipolar. It's always excited because something good happens in the world. But then when something bad happens in the world, it gets really down. So it's really happy and then it's really sad. That's not God. No, God is not dependent on the world. For my God self is not dependent on the world for my happiness. My God self is just always okay. When I'm really listening to what God has to tell me, it's just there's a feeling of peace. There's a feeling of trust, to rely upon spirit totally. And I know that everything is okay. I know that God has my back. I know that there's nothing in the world that's going to make me happy. I know that I have everything I need within me right here, right now. And my only desire is to share the love that I feel with the world. I'm not coming at the world from a needy place. That's the ego. I mean, A Course in Miracles talks about special relationships as opposed to holy relationships. And it could be a romantic relationship or not. But special relationships are, I think there's something lacking in me. So to connect with this particular person is going to fill my perceived lack. But that is just not true. There is nothing lacking in me, so a holy relationship is two people needing nothing within themselves, knowing that they have everything and their only desire is to share what they know they have with their brother. That's the difference between a special relationship is coming from a place of need, where a holy relationship is coming from a place of fulfillment, and I guess when you go into the world with any desire, and you're really coming from a needy place, whether it's a relationship or a certain amount of money or a job. If you come into the world and you're coming from a place of lack, you actually are pushing away the very thing that you desire, because you need it. Like, need is a fear-based energy. But if you're coming at the world from a place of peace and love and joy, and knowing that God is what sustains us, not another person, not an outside event, not an outside resource or a job or anything at all, when we know that we have everything that we could ever possibly want within us, it kind of like takes the need out of the situation, and then we're much more likely to attract what we want from the world when we let go of that need. I think I've been studying that principle for a very long time, because neediness, it's like a lower energetic vibration. It's, I'm not enough and I'm looking to the world to fill me up. And that's just a very inaccurate portrayal of who I am. So I'm not in my right mind when I'm connecting with that needy state. But when I can just kind of stop, plug myself into my God socket, however I manage to do that. It could be meditation, it could be prayer, it could be breathing, it could be slowing down. When I realize that there's nothing that I need from the world, everything changes. And that happened to me a couple times yesterday when I was on the boat. I had some darkness, some unresolved emotions inside me. And then, I just did simple things. At one point I cried and I released the anxiety. At another point, I think I took a walk down the beach. I released the anxiety. It's just a matter of stopping our mind and remembering who we really are, remembering that nothing from the world can really make us happy unless we find that happiness first within ourselves, and it's challenging to get to that state of mind when you're not there. A Course in Miracles is it's very black and white in a way, because it says that we're with God or we're with the ego. Like, God does not know the ego, because the ego is an illusion. The ego does not know God, because, again, the ego is an illusion. So the two entities don't know each other. But I know when I'm aligned, when I've given allegiance to the ego, I think it takes a sense of certain disciplines to replug myself back into my God socket, because I know how it feels to be connected to God. And I also know how it feels to be disconnected to God. Being connected to God makes me really happy. Being disconnected from God makes me really unhappy. But when we're in that unhappy state of mind, and we're all there sometimes, it is a bit challenging to retrain our mind and to plug ourselves back in, right, Myrna?
Oh my God, everything you said is truth. And when you speak truth, then that is such a great place to be, because if you can speak it, then you can understand it. If you can speak it, you can understand it. And then the trick is to embody it and make it work. And that's really all it takes. I want the peace of God. I'm looking at lesson 185, which is really a review of today's lesson 205. And if we just got that very first paragraph, to say these words is nothing, but to mean these words is everything. If you could but mean them for just an instant, there would be no further sorrow possible for you in any form, any place or time. And then below, the next paragraph 2. Many have said these words, but few have meant them. You have but to look upon the world you see around you to be sure how very few they are. So the Course in Miracles is substantiating that, that, we how many people have said that I want peace, but that to me indicates that we really don't really understand what true peace is. Again, we don't understand it. And if we truly meant it, then we would then be able to embody it, feel it, extend it, and so forth. And when you extend it, you extend, as you said before, that high vibration, that high, that's what you are also extending out into the world, that vibrational skill that you've acquired by understanding the peace and now using it to the best of your ability to own your pain, to know that you're not going to feel peaceful by going in that direction. You're only going to feel peaceful by being in that part of you that is true. And there's no other truth than that. You talked about relationships. The Course in Miracles, what is a relationship? Is, if it's not a holy relationship, then it's a relationship based on need, and that is of a lower vibration. And so, neediness is certainly not going to bring you to higher realms of understanding, because you think you need from another person what that person must give you in order for you to be happy. But the holy relationship to me is when two people really want the same thing, and we don't want anything from each other. And that's just about giving what you can to be the best you can be with that other person. And it's up to the other person to either accept that or not. But if you know you're the best you can be, and you're really coming from a place of peace, true peace, then why wouldn't any relationship work out unless the person that you're trying to convince is not going to be convinced? And that's not a holy relationship. You can't make it into one if it's not understood. I'm looking at,
we can't get our peace, love, joy, and happiness from another person. I remember when I was really young, I used to always think that, oh, when I fall in love with my soulmate, then I'm going to be happy. Well, that's just not true. And it's happened to me time and time again. It's like when sometimes we start out in a romantic endeavor, we feel that high, because I guess something inside of us connects to a certain feeling, but that high is not about the other person. That high is there's something in us that kind of gets plugged into our God socket. We like falling in love. It's like we're falling in love with ourselves. We're falling in love with God. It's just never, ever from the other person. And it's so obvious in my life now. I know if I feel good, well, my time with my husband is even better. If I feel not so good, my time with my husband sucks. And it's not about him. It's about me, because I remember the first time I fell in love with a man, it was probably about 30 years ago. And I remember walking along the beach in Acapulco, Mexico, and I was just so in love with life. And again, this was my first romantic experience of falling in love with a man. Now, the man that I had just fallen in love with was not with me. He was in the hotel room sleeping. And I just remember speaking to a man on the beach who worked for the hotel, and he only spoke Spanish, but somehow I managed to connect with him, because it's not about words. It's about the fact that my energy was so high, and he was picking that up. I remember like playing with the dog on the beach. I remember seeing the moonlight. I remember seeing the waves. And I guess what I'm saying is it was not about the man I was with. It was about something that I experienced within myself. So I just don't think that a person can bring that high energetic vibration to us. And even things of the world, it's when we get the job or we get something that we want from the world, it just doesn't last. Like a new car. My husband just got a new car. For the first couple of days, he was like, wow, I got a new car. After a couple of days, it didn't even matter anymore. It was just a very transient feeling. And it's what we're searching for is that connection with ourself with a capital S. And we could really be in love with life all the time. It's just about releasing the blocks and disciplining our minds and being clear about what's important to us. A Course in Miracles says we're much too tolerant of mind wandering, being clear about what's important to us. So, and there's things that we can do each day, that can help us along. I know my guru, my recent guru, Michael Singer, he has a yoga center. So I kind of been thinking of starting yoga. I'm like an avid workout person, and meditation and prayer are a part of my daily life. But I like the whole concept of yoga also. I'm thinking of possibly adding that activity to my life because I think it's such a spiritual, energetic frequency to do yoga.
Yeah, people speak of yoga. It does have some healing effects because I hear so many positive things about it. Maybe because it serves to still the mind. I've never done yoga. I did once in New York City years ago, but I found it so painful. I mean, the body, I mean, that was, there were different types of yoga. And somehow the pain was too much for me to bear. But there are other aspects of yoga that are really wonderful. And I hear very often that it's certainly a very good thing to attempt. You talked about a relationship. We can't make somebody love us. We can't make somebody even like us. We can't make it happen. And that's what sometimes we try too hard to do. And it's not a holy relationship if that's what you have to do, to try to make that person feel your needs, make that person love you more, want you more, like you more. I think the holy relationship for me is the one where you revere each other and you give each other the space to be themselves. Each gives the other space and to develop your own understanding of what your needs are, how to become the person that we strive to be. Who do we strive to be? To strive to be a person through a job. Does my job define me? No, it doesn't. Does this define me? No, it really doesn't. We look for things to define who we are through wrong outlets. A good job is wonderful. And if we don't stress about a job and we wait for the right job to come along through our not neediness, but in other words, just letting God lead us down the path through, just letting go and having faith and trust that it'll come about, then we're bound to attract what we really want from the world, whether it be a job, whether it be a love, an outlet of some kind. And those things do come to us when we don't try too hard to pursue them. Not to make somebody give something to us, but to acquire it through love. And the feeling of love is first we have, as you said before, first we have to love ourselves. And that's the greatest love of all. Whitney talk about songs. Whitney Houston sang that song, the greatest love of all is to love ourselves, to love yourself, but the greatest love of all, really. And that's what I think, being in that place of truth, of calmness, and yeah, to be in that.
Yeah, I mean, the world is nothing more than an external reflection of an internal condition. So the world is reflecting back to us what we believe to be true on a deep level. So if we're loving ourselves, the world is going to reflect that love back to us. If we're not loving ourselves, the world will probably not reflect that back to us. And if we're experiencing a lack of love, it's not about blame or judgment. It's just about making a different choice, showing compassion for ourselves, and start to love ourselves a little more. You know, it's interesting because when you really talk to anybody on a deep level, I mean, we all have challenges in this earthly classroom. You know, I was talking to someone a week ago who just seemed, in my mind, to have everything so together in her world. And then as she shared with me the challenges that she has in her life, I mean, there were quite a few. So I guess, you know, we're all down here trying to find our way back home to heaven. I know there was this occurrence at a local marina. My husband and I, we keep our boat at a marina in Northampton, Massachusetts. It's called the Oxbow Marina, which is a really nice marina. There's another marina about a mile down the river. It's called Brunel's Marina. And what happened was just recently, because of the water, I guess, in Canada, you know, there's been a lot of flooding. The river raised itself really high, and our marina was fine because of how it was designed. But the marina that I just mentioned, that was about a mile down the river from us, Brunel's Marina, I guess it really didn't stand up too well with all this flooding. So I think some of the boats, from what I hear, were demolished. And what happened immediately after that event, the owner of the marina ended up committing suicide, you know, and it was just so shocking that this external trigger could cause such, you know, fear and frustration that he would want to take his own life. I kind of think it probably was just the icing on the cake. There was a lot of events that were a lot of darkness that he wasn't able to process. So when this outside occurrence came in and he had problems with his marina, he just took his own life. And you know, I don't know what Course in Miracles would say about that. I guess what you said, Jesus told you, is we'll just have to come back in another incarnation and start relearning the lessons. It doesn't serve any purpose. I don't believe in punishment, but I think it's a terrible thing. I mean, you know, my book, Surrender to Joy, From Suicide to Serenity, I know what it feels like to be in that state of mind when, you know, there's no hope whatsoever and we just want out. It's just a really agonizing way to be. And I think, you know, when we place too much emphasis on what's in the world, it's just so unhealthy and it's scary. And I think a lot of the world is actually feeling this negative vibratory frequency right now. It's prevalent in the world today. And as a Course in Miracles student, it's so important to do our best to keep our vibration high and stay above those unnecessary painful events, right, Myrna?
Yes, of course. The suicide is never the answer, because suicide is a desperate attempt to end pain, and that's what it is really. But it doesn't end pain, because pain is carried with us into our departure. So we carry the pain with us, and perhaps once we are in a place after death that we're probably nurtured by the heavenly angels, whatever, but have you, whatever, if you will. But then I think you have to come back and then relive that again until you resolve the pain. Pain is something that has to be worked out. And I think we're given this lifetime to come to terms with that and to work out that pain here. And we really should rejoice because we have the opportunity to do that. And like you said before, it really helped me a lot, what you said, that we have to own the pain, because what is it? They're not just words, already own the pain. That truly means that we have to look at our pain and recognize that it doesn't belong to anybody else. And once we can do that, then we can begin to then heal from it. Because how many times, you wonder if somebody committed suicide just to spite somebody else. Who knows really what's in the mind of a suicidal soul. But the healing doesn't certainly happen by ending it through suicide. And I think, you and I have traveled a long road, through a lot of stormy weather. And because I've known you a very long time, and it's been a journey, an upward hill journey, because it wasn't easy. But I think once we see, and once we truly get it, then the triggers that come to us are not just triggers that we can't explain. We can't explain them. We can explain them by recognizing that it's within our own self to release that, and nobody else can do it for us. And sometimes it takes a lot of pain to go through in order to see that. I talk about this pretty often. I've suffered a lot of pain through my early childhood, growing up in a dysfunctional family, experiencing abusive behavior and all of that. And of course, that carries into adulthood, and that can lead to suicide too, because the pain manifests into hatred, and then you really start to experience problems that really don't exist, that are now manufactured by the ego. The ego loves that importance, the importance that it takes on its own to blame the world for what we're suffering. But pain is a valid teacher as well, because through pain is how we can experience peace. How do we know what peace is unless we've experienced pain first? And we can see the difference. Maybe that's why we need to suffer through the pain.
Yeah, I think what you said was very wise. You said many times suicide is possibly done to spite someone else. And I will say from my own personal experience, I think part of the reason that I attempted suicide was to spite my father, because he was never able to emotionally show me his love. So I thought by killing myself, he would regret being so closed off from me. So I did it to spite him, which is nonsensical. It makes no sense, but that's why I did it. And I also think that I attempted suicide because I was unable to own the pain. The family that I grew up in did not allow uncomfortable feelings to be communicated or shared or experienced. So because I was not allowed to feel any of the uncomfortable feelings within myself, it just built up and it built up and it built up. That's why I always quote that Araya Mountain Dreamer poem. And I thought about it too, the Araya Mountain Dreamer poem, the invitation, when I was sitting on the boat yesterday, and I cried. You know, she writes, I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without trying to hide it or fade it or fix it. And I thought about that as I was crying. And it's not easy to do, to own your own pain without blaming someone else. It's really difficult, and it requires a lot of discipline and a lot of courage. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It requires a lot of courage in order to own your own pain. But when you can do that, the joy on the other side is miraculous. I mean, it really is, because again, I just go back 24 hours and I remember the joy that I experienced on the other side of the pain. And I just felt so free, you know. And again, it doesn't stay forever. It's not like you cry once and you're cured. But when a person can own their own pain, it really clears the channel. It really clears our channel and helps us open up to the freedom on the other side of the pain. You know, the next line in the Araya Mountain Dreamer poem is, I want to know if you can dance with joy, if you can allow the ecstasy to fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes, without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. And I felt that joy at numerous times in this lifetime. Again, it doesn't last. I'm not enlightened yet, but when I do feel it, it's just so beautiful. It really is. And I guess it's important to give myself credit, you know, for attaining that state of mind through practicing the principles of A Course in Miracles, you know, because A Course in Miracles works. I did this video once on A Course in Miracles. I took the 12-step chant. It works if you work it, so work it, you're worth it. You know, A Course in Miracles works if you take the time to adhere to the principles. I mean, it really does. And it's so beautiful. It's like I'm feeling it right now after an hour of talking to you, Myrna. Thank you so much.
Yes, I mean, I loved it also. I just want to just interject with, you talked about your father, those early years that were so painful. You even attempted suicide, but towards the end, and I was with you, you know, towards the end when your father passed away, that I got from what I got is that you had a camaraderie with him at the end, at the very end. And look at the road that you traveled, and you are Course in Miracles, a student. And I attribute that, like you said, it works, and it worked for you, obviously, because you and your father, I believe that you had that the love was then came through at the end. And you told me how you would sing with him, and you were with him at the nursing home, and you brought joy to him in singing with him, right? Didn't you say that? Shirley
Temple on the good ship Lollipop. Yeah, I think my father and I have had numerous lifetimes together. That's what I think. You know, in this lifetime, maybe he inflicted a little more pain onto me. In the last lifetime, I might have inflicted a little more pain onto him. I mean, I don't have any past life memories, but I think, you know, my father and I, we have had different lifetimes, as you know. They say that you know, if you do believe in reincarnation, that sometimes people are incarnated with soul groups. So I think my father is part of my soul group, you know, to learn lessons. It's always about learning lessons, and by overcoming the pain, the lesson that we learn is just so much greater than the pain we experience, right?
Yes, yes. But the idea is that we learn them. So it was worth the pain, I think. If I learned the lessons that I believe that I've learned, which for me, a big thing was forgiveness. Oh, I mean, that was the biggest thing of all. And the whole Course in Miracles is predicated, I mean, on that, on forgiveness. And you even said that just now when you said those gratitude, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, or I don't know. If you
Yeah,
said
that's what I said. Acceptance, gratitude, and forgiveness. That's
Yes.
exactly what I said.
Yes.
So on that note, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's 4:00 and I love you so much, Myrna. And I
Yeah.
always end with my introduction to A Course in Miracles. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. The only thing that's real is the love. And I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Myrna. My vibration is higher.
Me too. Thanks, love.
Thank
Bye
you
now.
so much, Myrna and Susan.
Thank
We'll see
you.
you all Friday. We'll see you Friday, Susan.
I'm going
We'll
to
see
tune
you,
in.
Myrna, tomorrow.
Well, I might see you tonight too. What is it? Amy Anderson is on
Yes,
tonight.
Amy's on
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah.
So,
I was
all
telling
right.
Susan